Welcome to HA300R SAP HANA Implementation and Modeling. My name is Khalid Jamali. I'm a senior instructor working for SAP United Kingdom. Let's look at the units which are covered in this course. We have 11 units altogether, starting with the first unit, which is Approaching SAP HANA Modeling. So this is where we look at the best practices. Then unit number 2, Connecting Tables, where we look at the different kinds of joins, advanced modeling techniques, full text search, processing information models, managing modeling content, security and authorizations, and then how to load data into SAP HANA, where we have 4 options: data provisioning using SLT, SAP Data Services, flat file upload, and direct extractor connection. So let's start with the first unit, Approaching SAP HANA Modeling. In this unit, we have one lesson, which is Best Practice Guidelines. Within this lesson, we have 3 topics: persistency considerations, so you can choose which is the best option for your reporting requirements, SAP HANA Engine Overview, and choosing views for the information model. So we'll start off with this slide, which is persistency considerations. In SAP HANA, there are different ways to create your models for reporting. So thought has to be given to which option of persistency is right for you. So on this slide, you can see there are 5 options: column table, analytic view, calculation view using SQL, calculation view using SQL script, and row table. So the only persistency options here is column table and row table. So this is where the data is actually stored. And on top of these tables, you can create the different views, the column views, which are shown, analytic views, calculation views as well. So storing data in a column table is good for select statements. So for fast, efficient reading of tables, we recommend the column table. The row table is good for inserts. Therefore, it is good for write-intensive scenarios. Let's look at the pros and cons for each of these methods. On this slide, you can see the comparison between the 4 different options. So the first option, the column table, is good if you just want to load some data into a column table and use that for your reporting requirements. So there's no additional modeling required. So this simplistic approach is good for very, very simple scenarios. However, you have to note that it does not support any analytical privileges, multi-language or client handling, and also any calculations are sent to the client for processing. So in general, the performance is going to be low. The next option, which is the recommended option, is the analytical view. This option has very good performance on select, as I mentioned previously as well, and it's well optimized. However, it is still limited in the functionality. So if you want any complex calculations, then the only option available is to go to the calculation view option. So calculation views can be created by adding SQL or SQL script. If you're going to add SQL, it is good because you don't have to learn anything new. Most people know SQL, but the performance is not that great because the queries are less optimized and they could have an impact on your performance. For good performance, we recommend using CE functions, which are the calculation engine functions available in SQL script. These CE functions are specifically made for SAP HANA. Therefore, the client queries are well optimized and they will give you good performance than SQL. The downside is that you have to learn a new language. On this slide, we're looking at the different engines which are used for processing our analytic and calculation views. So first of all, we have the join engine on the right hand side. This is used for attribute views. And then the OLAP engine is used for analytic views. The calculation engine on top is used for calculation views. So the calculation engine is used on top of the OLAP engine and or join engine for complex calculations which cannot be done by either the join engine or the OLAP engine. The SQL optimizer, which you can see on top, decides the best way to call the engines depending on the involved models and queries. There's also a row store engine, so if you're using a row store tables in your queries, the row store engine is used. And this is a summary of what I've just talked about. So join engine is used for attribute views, OLAP engine for analytic views, and calculation engine is used for calculation views. Now it's worth noting that if you're using a calculated attribute in either attribute views or analytic views, then the calculation engine is also used. So in other words, the behavior is like a calculation view. This is important to note because this can have an impact on your performance since all the three engines are being used. So we're now looking at the general modeling principles. So these are the best practices that we have gathered and we are sharing with you. The idea here is to minimize the transfer of data between the different engines. So for example, if you start right at the bottom, you can apply a filter on your column table so less data is being transferred to the engines. So here you can apply constraints, a where clause, or even analytical privileges to reduce the amount of data. At the next level, you have the attribute and analytic views. So here you can avoid calculations before the aggregations are done on a line item level. Also, you can do the joins on key columns or index columns. So from here, if you have a calculation view, you want to minimize the data that is being transferred. So we want to aggregate the data records by using group by or reducing columns. And then right at the top, you want to avoid sending too much sending large data sets between the HANA database and the client application because you want to avoid the client application doing most of the processing. On this slide, we have a flow chart which can help you in deciding which view to use for your reporting requirements. If you have a simple aggregation or you just want to create a star schema, then an analytic view would be sufficient for your reporting needs. However, if you want to add joins or calculated expressions, then the next option is to use an attribute view and add that attribute view to an analytic view. If you have any more complex requirements, for example, you want to add a union between two analytic views, then the next option is the graphical calculation view. Because remember, the calculation view comes in two flavors. One is to use a graphical interface, and the other one is just by scripting. So if it's just a union, for example, then you can use the graphical interface. However, if you want to do your own scripting and you have more complex requirements, then the other option is to use SQL script in the calculation view. And we recommend that you use the CE functions in your scripted calculation view. The CE over here stands for calculation engine. So we finished unit number 1 and we've looked at the account persistency consideration. So we talked about the 5 options: the column storage, the row storage, analytic views and the 2 calculation view options as well. So you have to choose which one is best for you. Also, we looked at the different engines. So we had the 3 engines, the analytic view, the OLAP engine, the join engine, and also the calculation engine. And I also talked about the best practices or general recommendations for those.